Om Sadashivasmarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Padyantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Namaste everyone. Welcome back to this episode of Saṁvādaḥ. And once again, we are joined by me, Clifford G, who is a psychotherapist and also a Western philosopher and a student of our Guru Pujya Swami Dayananda Saraswati Ji. So today's topic we'll be discussing from moving from becoming to being. So Birji, if you'd like to take over.
Okay, yeah. To be more formal, it's more like a shift as opposed to a movement. It's a shift from becoming and to being. And the wonderful thing about Vedanta is it makes distinctions and it uses juxtaposition so that you see by putting two things together and distinguishing them, you actually see both clearer. And what I want to deal with, because I work with people, and the whole my main interest is how do you help people resolve their psychological pain. This is a ordinary interesting subject: the difference between being and becoming. And so what we're going to do is we're going to first of all look at how, as human beings, we're normally enclosed in the process of becoming. Now, again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use, sometimes I call them Dayananda gems. You know, he would say something that just opens up with great clarity these statements that shed light on so much of our life. And he said this statement. He said, the reason that people seek happiness is they're unhappy. Now, and when I saw that, I went, my goodness, it's obviously true. But so he understood, Swami Dayananda understood that human beings suffered from a tremendous unhappiness. And because of that unhappiness, they were engaged in a striving to be happy, to be happy. So their whole psychology was based on, here was this unhappiness, which he clarified as fear. Do you know what I mean? Fear of annihilation. Do you know what I mean? Which is the grand fear, the fear of death. You know what I mean? And that's translated psychologically as fear of being nothing, right? And self-dissatisfaction. I hate being the way I'm like. And then out of that fear comes this, I've got to be different in order to solve this. I have to be a better version of myself, as they say these days.
Right.
All right. So what happens is, here I am, I'm constantly striving towards a future that's going to solve this fundamental problem centered on me, this fundamental unhappiness that I am being. Do you see what I mean? And the most interesting thing about this is that it's such an obvious thing, but it's not necessarily seen. But so our whole striving is a movement away from what I'm being to what I imagine will be my solution.
Right.
All right. Now, let's say, for example, how this works out practically. Let's say that I have this striving to be liked and admired. This is a normal binding desire, to be liked and admired, right? Now, why is it so delicious that I should be liked and admired by other people? Because I feel so. What this shows is the unhappiness that's behind that striving. Mm-hmm. So, you see, if I was acceptable to myself, if I was genuinely, this is very important to understand Swami Dayananda's psychology. If I was content within myself, if I knew what it meant to be with myself and be at home with myself as I am, then there would not be that desperate wanting to be liked and admired, would there be?
Right, it wouldn't be.
This wouldn't be. But the problem is, it is there because it is there. because of this, so what happens is this problem of fear and self-dissatisfaction, I hate being what I'm like, there's a tremendous striving towards me wanting a future where I'm not going to be like that. Does that make sense? So you see how it's a movement. So becoming is a movement through space and time towards a solution that I think is the solution. Mm-hmm. Now, it's interesting how Western psychology, it thinks that human beings adapt themselves to the environment. Have you heard that one?
Right.
For Swami Dayananda, human beings, their personality and their strivings are an adaptation to this fundamental problem. Mm. Big difference. So the way I am and the way this striving that I'm involved in is my effort to try and deal with this fundamental problem. Mm. So it's an adaptation of me trying to find a solution to me, right? And so let's just take this practically. Ever been involved with an altercation with your spouse?
Yes.
Now, what happens here, Swami Dayananda was really good. Everyone would laugh when you do this. He'd say, marriage is yoga, right? Now, even though that was tongue-in-cheek, marriage is yoga because in the love-sex we are revealed. You know, there's no pretension there. Our spouse knows exactly what we're like.
Right.
You know, there's no kind of trying to be bigger and special. They know you're an ordinary human being. Do you see what I mean? So, and what happens is, let's say, for example, when you get angry, what's happened is here you're in the striving towards going towards happiness. You're going towards your version of happiness, right? Whatever that might be. And that version will be that, you know, you've found different things, or you know that certain experiences give you the feeling that you've overcome this fundamental unhappiness. So, for example, if you're treated with respect and you know and the way you want to be, you know, approved of or whatever, right? When you feel like that, then you feel like I like this. This is good, right? Everything's fine. Everything's fine because I'm getting. But notice how my whole psychology is organized around, say, for example, being loved. So when your spouse acts in an unloving or rejecting way, suddenly it's right, because what's happened is you are thrown back on the self-dissatisfaction. So because your striving is away from the feeling of self-dissatisfaction towards an experience that's going to give you the experience of not having the problem.
Right.
It's only experience. Everyone's obsessed about experiences or have a passion for the world because they're looking for some experience that's going to anesthetize this problem. So when someone says, you know, Bee just is such a magnificent person, I can't believe it. You're wonderful. Really? You think so? Okay. Delicious. Why is it so delicious? It's delicious. Ego satisfaction is delicious. Ego inflation is so delicious because of the opposite. So what I'm actually, the good that I am after, I'm always striving for experiences that are away from me in order for me to feel happy in myself. Does that make sense? And so you've got this continual becoming, continually becoming. And in our Western culture, the three big ones are greed. In other words, I'm greedy for certain experiences, particularly sensory experiences, because it frees me from being a feeling of being nothing. So what happens is sex becomes important, drugs become important, exciting experiences become important. So ordinary life is not good enough. I have to have you understand what I'm greedy. I'm like a little 6-year-old kid. Gimme. You see what I mean? So greed is not just simply, wanting material possessions. That's also true. Wanting experiences, wanting things so that I can feel good in myself. You know, this weird thing in our culture. In order to be, I has to have. If I don't have, I'm not being. I can't be unless I have lots. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel diminished if I don't have enough. Because I want to amount to something. You heard that saying, I want to amount to something.
Yeah.
So that greed, so you understand about the greed? So there's greed, then there's the desire for fame. Another very, particularly lately, it's just become nuts. You know, how many likes you get on Facebook. You know, it's to be outstanding, to stand out, to get applause, to be somebody. So again, the only reason that is so delicious, that movement of becoming. So you understand, the movement of becoming is that when it's greed, I want certain experiences. When I feel diminished and inferior as a person, if I become outstanding, how magnificent is that? But why is it so attractive? Why is that so attractive? Because of the sense of self-dissatisfaction. This is the only reason that this is the whole point for Swami Dayananda's psychology. This gives us an understanding. We're constantly striving for experiences away from ourself to make us happy. Hello, right? So you've got greed, and the other thing within our Western culture, a lot of people sometimes feel empty. They feel and they're afraid of this emptiness. They feel empty because, in one sense, they are empty. They're deficient of reality. So it's like for Swami Dayananda, when you're cut off from reality, you can't help but be miserable. In our Western scriptures, we have this a metaphor of the vine and the branches. If you're cut off from the vine, you're a withering branch. You can't be happy cut off from God.
Right.
It's just not possible. So, but this emptiness we become passionate for certain experiences in the world, which is which, as we know in Vedanta, when we have a passion for the world, there's no chance of being dispassionate, is there?
No. Yeah.
Okay, so we're caught in this striving to greed, gimme experiences, so I can feel alive. Do you know what I mean? This is why we have this obsession with drugs and sex and exciting experiences in our culture now. And it's ramped up unbelievably. And also the fame and the outstanding. And the last one, which is the most delicious of all, is power. There's nothing like power, status. Do you know what I mean? Bigger and better than other people, being magnificent. And at all the same time, we have at the same time we have to present the face of innocence. Oh no, I'm not. I don't have to things like this. Well, that's nonsense. In our culture, we've been brought up. These three values in our culture, our Western culture particularly, are the context in which we have been born into, and we are affected by this. But so the culture determines the form of the strivings, if you know what I mean. But the form, but not the striving itself to become.
Right.
The striving itself is this tremendous fear and this tremendous self-dissatisfaction. Now, it's not a totally negative thing, because for Vedanta, we understand that if I really knew what it was to be myself, I wouldn't have these strivings, which is a very important point. But we're just looking at this morning, just at the beginning, that this becoming is constant, compulsive, and relentless. And it's all based on that little statement of his. People are only striving to be happy because they're unhappy. And we're not talking about doing the needful, because doing the needful is not trying to make myself feel good about myself. It is bringing value into the world that's necessary for me to be in harmony with it. Do you know what I mean? It's a different thing. Do you know what I mean? It's the difference between Swami Dayananda's shift from being a consumer, gimme, to being a contributor.
Right.
But when you contribute, like what Swami Dayananda says, you can't get love from a marriage. You need to bring love to the marriage.
Right.
Radical difference. Because when I bring love to the marriage, I'm not going to I'm then freed from that becoming, aren't I? I'm no longer using my partner so I can feel good. Do you see what I mean? So this is this dynamic of becoming is so pervasive that we don't even notice it. Right? So, but what happens is, and this becoming, at any one moment, a human being is always in an attitude. Would that be true?
Right.
Yeah, you're always in a way of being in the world. That's what Dayananda means by an attitude, an actual way of being in the world. Now, these attitudes have been built into us from past experience, and they constantly get activated, right? So I have an attitude of, but they're always within the context of striving. So when I'm angry, I'm not getting what I want, for example. You know what I mean? Or I'm hurt, and then I'm looking to express hostility to try and deal with my hurt. Do you know what I mean? So we're constantly, our sense of identity is always attitudinal. Like when I say I am angry, that means I am being the anger. When I say I'm empty, I'm being the emptiness. When I say that I'm annoyed, I'm being the annoyance. It's something I am being. And most of these attitudes, all of them, in fact, are based on two things. They're based on ignorance of what I am, of what I have ignorance. I don't know what it means to be myself. So that's the ignorance, and they're based on past experience. They are. So I've got all these ways of being that have been built into me. Dayananda called them, built-in reactions, right? So, and they're built in. And what happens is when I look at myself, right? I look at myself and I go, oh my God, because I've got, even when I look at myself, I've got a becoming thing. I want to be happy with my mind. With my mind, I want it to be happy and peaceful and good. I've got a striving to have a happy mind. Are you familiar with that one? And then I've got a striving to control other people so that I feel happy.
Right.
And I've got a striving to control the world and circumstances so that I can be happy. So what happens is I look at myself and then up pops an attitude, maybe self-condemning. Oh, I hate myself. I don't like this. I wish I was, So straight away, when I'm feeling that self-hatred, what am I going to start to try and do? Try and fix it. I'm going to straight away move into becoming in order to fix becoming.
Right.
This is the problem. So, or for example, when I have my spouse says something I don't like, I'm going to engage in becoming to try and change her so I can feel good. So and if circumstances that I don't like, now we're not talking about like what Dayananda says, if the mosquitoes are biting you, fix the mosquitoes. You know what I mean? Put a weapon or whatever, right? So we're not talking about doing the needful. We're talking about this endeavor to try and change myself, try and change others, try and change the world so that I can feel happy in myself, so I can solve this fundamental problem of pain. Are we clear so far?
So
Now,
there's a question I do have.
Sorry?
There's one question that I have here.
Mm-hmm.
So when we speak about becoming versus being, is there room in these teachings to incorporate some notion of becoming in the beginning? Let's say a person needs to gain some maturity. They need to gain a sense of responsibility, a gain of understanding of Dharma before they're able to function well, to set some of those functional roles in place in life.
No, because Dharma isn't becoming. Because you see, this is the point. So when for example, you see what happens is what is needed is a shift out of becoming. Right now, that has to start from the very beginning.
So could that be the grand vision to start with? But let's say we have something called the sadhana chatushtaya, which talks about cultivating certain qualities. So
but the cultivating of qualities, because you're talking about attitudes, right? Mm-hmm. They are not the result of becoming. So we must be clear on that. So becoming is very specific. It's based on pain, centered on myself.
Okay.
Right? So the teaching liberates me from becoming and moves me in the direction of learning to be.
Right.
While I'm living.
Right.
Right? So it's not, so the teaching, basically, when I'm enclosed in becoming, I'm literally cut off from reality. I cannot be aware of the presence of God when I'm becoming.
Right.
All right? So we'll just go into that now. So, but is it clear that people are engaged in this obsessive, compulsive striving to become in order to try and feel happy?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay? And they're enclosed in it, right? And now notice one thing. So what we want to deal with is that when I'm upset with my wife, I'm trying to change her. Okay? Otherwise, if I don't try and change her, if I don't attack her, and this is the Dharma, because I understand, okay, I am not going to dramatize hostility. Okay, let's say I am not, under no circumstances am I going to dramatize hostility. I'm not talking about being alive to the fact of hostility, because Swami Dayananda says that we need to be alive to facts, right? So being alive to facts, this is an action that enables us to not become, in a sense, right? Because what happens is I'm aware that my wife has done something or said something I don't like. I'm aware of my reactions of hostility about it. I'm alive to both. Being alive to facts is not becoming, actually.
Okay.
Right? So, and you know how he says that the practice of karma yoga is to bring you back to yourself?
Right.
If I don't dramatize my hostility, in other words, engage in becoming, I'm left with myself as I am. Now, what we need to do is to be able to resolve that pain into being. That's what we're going to do. So the solution is not to engage in more becoming to get out of the becoming.
Right. So then what term would you use for a process of self-growth and self-improvement? Like what would you phrase that as to separate it from the sense of
Okay.
the term?
Yep. What Swami Dayananda calls that is that he says that emotional growth is where I am moved, right? So that when I want to do what I need to do, Now, he also says that the basic person, the dynamic form of the basic person is love and care.
Right.
So when I am moved by love, in the sense that he means by acceptance. So when I actually have a relation to what's happening and I am being accepting, I'm being loving. And when I'm wanting to act in a caring way, then that is emotional maturity. When I am moved by Dharma, which is love and care, that's how it translates. Dharma always translates as a way of being in the world which is loving and a way of being in the world which is caring. When I am being like that in the world and I am being moved by these dharmic strivings, that is emotional maturity. That is the whole game of karma yoga. That's what he calls emotional maturity. But that emotional maturity is not possible to come about by becoming.
Right.
Okay? Right? So, now, he says a very interesting thing. He says that there's an attitude that is born out of our understanding of Ishvara. Have you ever heard that? He talks about the attitude of graceful acceptance. He says it's born out of our understanding of Ishvara. Now, this is very interesting. In other words, all the attitudes that I'm normally involved in and caught up with are the result of past experiences and my ignorance.
Right.
But this is an attitude that is born out of my contact with God, born out of my contact with reality. Now, this is wild. So what we're talking about is an attitude that is the basis of karma yoga. is the basis of what he means by remaining the same in the face of changing experiences. He calls yoga sameness.
Right.
So, but in order to remain the same in the face of changing experiences, I have to be accepting, don't I?
Yes.
Be accepting. But what he's saying is that this accepting is not, I will now be accepting. He says it's born out of my contact with Ishvara,
Yes.
my understanding of Ishvara. All right? Are we with it so far? So it's not something that I do. It's something that is born out of my contact with reality. So can we just go into that? Because this is really important. This is what, so here I am, I've committed to a life of Dharma, okay? And I'm with you and you say something I don't like, and I have this urge to retaliate. Now you can see that's becoming, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what I'm going to do is, he says that karma yoga brings you back to yourself. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to do that. So suddenly I'm now left with myself, aren't I?
Right.
I'm left with myself as I am, right? And I find that intolerable,
Yeah.
right? Now, it is precisely here is the factor of change, because have you ever heard him say that the basis of self-acceptance is the understanding of Ishvara?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, this is really important. You see, when I used to find myself being angry and uptight, I didn't like that. I'd try and change it. So I'd be angry and uptight and then, God, I don't want to be angry and uptight. I want to be something different. So I'd then try and change it. So guess what would I do? I'd go into becoming.
Right.
Okay? But Swami Dayananda has this beautiful saying, which he calls being relaxed in the lap of Ishvara. Have you ever heard him say that? It's a beautiful saying. Right? Now, for Swami Dayananda, the teaching is this, is that at any one time, my experience is in a particular form. Is that true?
Yeah.
So my experience might be in the form of anger, hostility, loneliness, upset, or whatever, but it's in a particular form. But that form, so when you got the form pot, it is still clay, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so his understanding of God is that God pervades every aspect of your experience as is, no matter what it is, because he says right and wrong only belong to action.
Right.
So if I retaliate and attack you because you've done something wrong, he'd say that's a wrong action.
Right.
But we need to, so if we don't do that, the question is, well, how do I resolve this psychological state of upset? How important is this? This is really important. So what we're going to be talking about now is how to resolve, what is required, not so much how, because it's not a how, it's an understanding of how to resolve my state of being. I mean, I'm tight and I'm angry. I want to wring your neck, Prashant, right? Now, you know how he says that the basis of self-acceptance is the understanding of Ishvara.
Yes.
Now, once I understand that the condition I'm in is not a moral issue at all, and in fact, that just like the clay pot, let's say I'm looking at an ugly clay pot, is it still the presence of clay?
No, it's not still in the present.
It's still the presence of clay, isn't it?
Right.
It's not, even if I don't like it, it's still the presence of clay, isn't it?
Yes.
Right? So the teaching is that right here, right now, as I am, in the particular form of experience I'm in, is precisely where I encounter the presence of God. God is not away from any aspect of my experience. This is a wonderful fact to understand.
Right.
Because, you see, this enables us to remain with ourselves as we are. This remains, it means, and I say, and I understand that the very presence of the given. Now, what Swami Dayananda means by the given, because it's there, I see it. Now, remember how he was asked a question, Swami Dayananda. Someone said to him, what's the meaning of life?
Mhm.
And Dayananda, in his eloquent way, goes, well, obviously the meaning of life is to live. Very Zen, right? So anyway, now, and then, but he said, and he said, this is a profound thing. He says, but we're only living what does it mean to live? He says, we're only living when we're alive to facts. Now get that? We're only living when we are alive to facts. My goodness. You mean that?
Objectivity.
Now, the fact is, you have said something I don't like, and I want to wring your neck. So I have to be alive to both, don't I?
Right.
I can't go into denial. If I go into denial, I'll go into becoming, won't I? Which is a denial, actually.
Yes.
But we're talking about, no, we're going to remain the same, and we're going to be alive to facts. Because in that aliveness to facts, I'm not becoming, am I?
No.
So if I'm with myself as I am, I'm like this, right? Normally what happens is there is a split inside me, isn't there? What he calls self-dissatisfaction. One part wanting to fight the other part. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Right? That's becoming. The very fat rupture. Do you see what I mean? That's. But what we're going to do is, because we understand that the very presence of the given, and what he means by the given is because it's there, you see it. The very presence of the given is the presence of God.
Right.
Now, what's great about this is, here you are, you're angry, and because you understand that there's no moral issue here, you're not upset. Even though I want to wring your neck, I might have vicious thought. It doesn't matter. I remain with myself as I am. Now, this was so great for me to learn this, because I remain with myself as I am, as is. You see, now, when I remain with myself as I am, can you see how I'm remaining the same? I'm not engaging in a becoming, and I'm also being alive to facts. Is that true?
Yes.
So the issue is I'm being alive to facts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm being what he calls objective.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's there, I see it. When I'm going, I shouldn't be like this, that's because I'm seeing it's there. I've got things going on in my head. Mm-hmm. I want to be able to be open and receive the presence of the given. This is what he means by self-acceptance, by the way. Mm-hmm. So when I am living with myself as I am, without resistance, he calls that being self-accepting. Mm-hmm. It's not, normally self-acceptance in the West means this. I look at myself as an object and I go, okay, I've got my faults and I've got my good points and bad points. Okay, I'm going to accept myself. He's not talking about that. That's not this attitude that is born out of the understanding of Ishvara. Right. The attitude of born, I'm with myself as I am without resistance. It doesn't mean that it might be unpleasant. When you get cold in the winter and you're shivering, it's unpleasant, but it's a fact, isn't it? Right? So this ability, this learning to be able to remain with myself as I am, enables me, and he says the basis of self-acceptance is understanding of Ishvara. I'm no longer afraid of what I'm being like. I'm not moving away. I'm not ruptured in myself. You know what I mean? Self-dissatisfaction is a dualism. I hate being what I'm like. There's a friction, isn't there? Resistance. The whole of becoming is resistance, actually. But when I'm remaining with myself as I am, remaining the same, and I'm being alive to facts, and I remain there, the moment is paradoxical. When I'm with myself as I am without resistance, guess what happens to the self-dissatisfaction?
Goes away. It
goes away. It's what he calls resolving the ego into Ishvara. Right? Now, this is not something, it's not like one day I'm going to resolve my ego into Ishvara. I have plenty of opportunities every day to resolve my ego into Ishvara. Because when you're faced with a circumstance, you're either going to be be in this attitude that is born out of the understanding of God. You're going to be in accepting. You're going to be actually abiding in a way of being which is accepting. It's a way of being. It's an attitude. Now, this can't be done. This is based on the understanding of Ishvara. Now, but the way we live this attitude is important, because the moment, you see, you know how they say that, you know, karma yoga is sameness, remaining the same in the face of changing experiences. Mm-hmm. It's not possible to remain the same in the face of changing experiences without this understanding of Ishvara. It's just not possible. Mm-hmm. Because we have this strange idea in the West, I can become accepting in myself. No, you're only acceptable when you're rooted in reality, in being. Yes. Okay, so it's only when we're rooted in God do we find ourselves acceptable. There's no such thing as me being acceptable when I'm separate and apart from God. That's ridiculous. Right. Do you see what I mean? But when I'm involved in becoming, I'm cut off cognitively from God. But when I'm remaining with myself, just with myself as I am, and you see, this is the fundamental, this is the teaching that he unfolded, that the very presence of the given, which is your present experience, is the presence of God. So now this is a wonderful thing to contemplate and to understand, because let's say, can we just try a little experiment here, Prashant, right? What we're going to do is we're just going to come back, and you see, I come back to myself as an individual as I am. So I come back to I'm here, I'm feeling something, I have a feeling of myself at any one moment. Is that true? Yes. So I'm just going to remain, so what I'm going to do is we're just going to do this for about 30 seconds. I'm just going to come back to myself as I am, the feeling of myself here, with the understanding that this is just simply the way things are. It's the result of laws, the way I am. And I'm going to just simply rest in the presence of what is here. There might be thoughts, sensations, the feeling of sitting here. Okay, what did you notice?
Mind becomes still, because you're not striving to become anything else, because that's what you are.
You're not broken up, are you?
Right. You
see, the thing is that you're not broken up in between the part that doesn't like what's happening. There's self-dissatisfaction. There's a self I'm dissatisfied with. You see the split?
Yes.
But when you're this, he considers this is the basis of the striving, you see. You know how he says this beautiful thing, a psychological thing. He says, basis of reaction. And what he means by reaction in this case is the dramatization. The basis of reaction is non-acceptance of fact. Now, is this now, the basis of reaction is non-acceptance of a fact. Right. Now, when you're with yourself just simply as you are, this is a shift from becoming to being, but it's being the aliveness to facts. Now, we're not interested in what we're alive to, because that's going to be determined by the laws, isn't it? That's outside our hands. So we have no idea what thoughts or feelings are going to come. That's out of hand. But what we're going to do is we're just going to sit. Did you notice that when you're just simply with yourself, you were just alive to what's there?
Yeah.
Now the reason for that is, and we go back to the Vedantic principle here, is that Sat is Chit. When I am being, we're not Buddhists. We don't think we need to practice awareness. When I am being myself, I will be aware. Can't help it. Can't help it. And notice also there's a sense of fullness, isn't there?
Yes.
Right? Now, this isn't Sat Chit Ananda in itself, but it is a reflection of Sat Chit Ananda as an attitude. Yeah. Are we clear here? So here I am, I'm with myself, and let's say that now, it's the same attitude. You see, this attitude of being accepting, we need to learn to live this attitude in the face of pleasant experiences and unpleasant experiences. Because you see, if you say something to me I don't like and I suddenly am dramatizing, I'm into becoming, aren't I?
Right.
Now, if you say something to me that I don't like and I'm suddenly compulsively, I'm suddenly upset, angry, and I'm attacking you, am I being free?
No.
I'm being determined, aren't I? And Dr. Freud was right. Most of human life is determined.
Yes.
But I need to, with karma yoga, we have this wonderful opportunity to learn to live freedom, psychological freedom. I'm not talking about the absolute freedom. Do you see what I mean? But when I'm being self-accepting, what it means is I'm being with myself as I am, and I'm alive to what is happening, aren't I?
Right.
And in that being alive to facts and relaxed doesn't mean you like it. You know, in Latin, compose means a composition put together. So when I'm angry like this and I'm remain with myself, I'm composed, aren't I?
Right.
But what we find is we have an expression in the West, waiting for God. It's like that. You like this, but if you just simply wait, if you wait, the action of the presence of reality will draw you out of becoming, and you'll start to find like what you'll find that what Swami Dayananda calls resting in the lap of Ishvara. You'll find, first of all, you're feeling composed. There's a relaxation. And sometimes he even said in his writings, this relaxation is yoga. And isn't that interesting? This relaxation is yoga. So you're just with yourself as you are. You're with your experience as you are. There's no friction. You see, being in the lap of Ishvara means you're released from friction.
Right.
This is so important. The whole common denominator of psychological reactions and reactivity is friction. I'm in friction with myself, with other people, or the world. This attitude, because it's rooted in being, frees us from friction. We're lifted out of friction because we're filled. Did you notice that when you were just sitting with yourself, did you notice that you were just simply filled with the presence of the given?
Yes.
Now that contact with the living presence of the given for Dayananda is contact with the living presence of God. So the presence of the given is the presence of the giver. This is his vision or understanding of God. So here I am. I'm faced all the time with experiences, aren't I? Now, as soon as I notice I'm in friction, that's like my red flag. I go, oh. So what I do is what normally happens when we're in friction, we either keep going to the process of becoming to try and deal with the friction, or then we get in friction about being in friction. We try and do something about ourselves, right? But when we just remain the same and we place ourselves as we are in God's hands, is another way of putting it, if we want to put it religiously. We just place ourselves as we are, and then we just simply wait. The contact with Ishvara, the contact with Ishvara is the transformative factor.
Right.
Not us. It's like, we're a block of ice in this warm water, and the warm water works on the block of ice. Right. We don't do it, but we have to arrive. You see what I mean? We're not available for the warmth, if you like, while we're becoming. Does that make sense? So what we learn is that we learn to remain the same in the face of changing experiences. This is the practice of yoga. Now, so when we look at what he means by being relaxed in the lap of Ishvara, there are three factors psychologically that become very evident. The first one is a sense of composure. Well, of course, because there's no rupture, there's no conflict, is there? So when you remain with yourself as you are, even if it's an unpleasant psychological state, the fact of the matter is to remain with it is to be alive to facts, isn't it?
Yes.
Right? So there's first of all composure. There's also freedom in the sense that I'm not being determined by what you've said. Because I'm remaining with myself as I am without resistance, I'm released from being determined by what you said to me, aren't I? So I'm not being determined by the absence or presence of objects.
Yes.
And lastly, which is the most important, is that when I'm with myself as I am, and I'm at home with myself, right? That doesn't mean to say it's always pleasant, but I'm at home with myself. I'm willing to just be, I'm being with myself. I'm at home with myself. That frees me from self-dissatisfaction, doesn't it?
Right, right.
So all of that self-dissatisfaction, see, the composure, why we feel composed is because when we're rooted in Ishvara, we're released from fear. We feel at home with ourselves, we're released from self-dissatisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
What happens to the necessity of becoming?
It goes away.
This is the only solution. The only solution to becoming is to be resting in God. Are we clear on this?
Yes.
And because his understanding is that the very present, that we're looking always at the whole universe is the manifestation of being. It's the presence of being. The presence of is in the form of trees, cars, thoughts, feelings. It doesn't really matter. Do you know what I mean? This is quite a magnificent thing. So this learning to remain the same. So in our Western scriptures, we have this saying, that choose ye this day which master you're going to serve. Now, I can get busy becoming, get lost in becoming, or I can begin to practice karma yoga. That means that my orientation now is to be alive to facts,
Yes.
right? And so there's no psychological denial here. Because the wonderful thing about Swami Dayananda's psychological teaching is right and wrong only apply to action.
Right, correct.
The laws determine. If you say something and suddenly I'm just furious and I want to wring your neck, that's not a problem. It's just simply I want to wring your neck. It's just a psychological reaction.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is there's a difference between me being aware of a reaction, being alive to a reaction, then I'm not being the reaction. You see, if I'm alive to a reaction, I'm not being the reaction.
Right.
But if I'm being the reaction, I can't help but dramatize it. Does that make sense?
So once you're alive to the reaction, what would be the stage of resolution? And that's something that we've spoken about earlier, which is being in the lap of Ishvara. So that itself will resolve the reaction.
That resolves it. You see, once we understand that it's the presence of God appreciated, that's the transformative factor. Mm-hmm. The very presence of what is. So what happens is here I am, I'm with myself like this, right? Mm-hmm. First of all, I'm attacking, you say. I'm attacking, and suddenly what happens is, have you ever experienced this? The reality comes in, and because I've committed to karma yoga, the reality comes in, Bede, you're attacking. Mm-hmm. That's the spiritual understanding coming in, isn't it?
Right.
So suddenly I just stop. I've done this often with my spouse, at the beginning, particularly a lot, right? Mm. And then I just remain with myself. Do you know what I mean? I just would not move. Do you know what I mean? So in other words, I would leave myself as I am in Ishvara's hands, because when I'm with myself as I am, I'm being alive to facts, but I'm letting the presence of reality in, aren't I?
True. Right.
I'm not resisting the presence of reality. Swami Dayananda said a magnificent thing in his morning prayer, meditations. He says, I don't pray not to be critical. I pray to accept my criticalness.
Interesting.
Because everybody wants to do this. You see, one of the most deadliest things is what I would call spiritual becoming. I get this idea that I need to be holy and I need to be this, but it's just another becoming. Is what Dr. Freud called a reaction formation. Okay. So what happens is people who are hostile, they go, oh, I don't like that. So unconsciously, they then try amplify and try and be sweet and loving, right? The difference is that when you're with yourself as you are and you're in Ishvara's lap, what happens is you find yourself when you're being accepting, being accepting frees you from all forms of hostility. Do you know that?
That's true, yes.
See, I noticed that when I fall away from being accepting to that degree, I become unkind. Correct. And hostile. And also, when I fall away from caring, to that degree, I become indifferent or ruthless. Yes. So The solution is in being, but we learn about what being means by learning what it means to be resting in the lap of Ishvara.
True.
But where do we find the lap of Ishvara? Where is this? Where is the lap of Ishvara? Right here, right now, as I am. Now, the as I am is really important because of my understanding of Ishvara, even like going like this, I go, okay, I'm just going to remain with myself and I'm going to leave my transformation in the hands of Ishvara. Because I'm remaining with myself as I am, I'm turning up, if you like, as I am. I'm allowing the as I am to be transformed by the presence of God. Right? So this is, you see, Swami Dayananda says the only thing we can give God is our subjectivity. Do you know that? You can't give him anything. So what happens is when we're filled with the presence of the given, out of that is born an attitude. This attitude they formally call graceful acceptance, don't they?
Yes.
Do you see what I mean? So when we are being gracefully accepting, where's the problem psychologically?
Correct.
It's not there. Because we're actually being an attitude, and this attitude is actually literally is born out of our contact with God, with reality, with the presence of the given. This is what's so liberating about this one attitude of being accepting is the one attitude that we face every aspect of our life. Is this amazing or what? This one thing is the solution. This is from, we face ourselves with this attitude, the thoughts and feelings. We face other people and we face the world. Now the only way that establishes us in this attitude is by living it.
Right.
This is the magnificence of karma yoga. Because then what happens is, you know, the Freudian thing is, how do we get to the unconscious and how do we expose it to be able to release it and all this stuff, right? Very good question. Karma yoga solves this problem because my anger, my frustration, all the various forms of my self-dissatisfaction is going to be revealed on a moment-by-moment basis. Is that true?
Correct.
What a magnificent opportunity is. So now it's an opportunity. First of all, when I'm upset with my wife, because of the teaching, I understand that really this is a manifestation of self-dissatisfaction. Now I can take this present self-dissatisfaction and I can resolve it in Ishvara.
Right.
And then I can do it the next moment. I can resolve it in Ishvara. And as you do this, your psychology is resolved. All of the psychological content that's there, that's buried there, that's determining how you act, how you see, and all that stuff, it is coming to the surface. This is the magnificent thing about karma yoga, because it's brought about by his saying we resolve the ego into Ishvara. He says we need to do this. We need to do this. And so what happens is we're living the attitude of acceptance, and in that acceptance, our psychological reactions and pains and hostilities and stuff become resolved, and we get lighter and lighter and lighter. And this is a transformation of attitude. Do you notice that? So what happens is this attitude, we talk about cultivating the attitude. Once I have to first of all discover what this attitude means, this being relaxed in the lap of Ishvara, otherwise we can't start. Given that we understand what that means is, the more we live it, the more we become rooted in it. Does that make sense? But we need to live it. We can't just, you see, in Vedanta, the whole purpose of Vedanta is the discovery of what does it mean to be free while living. Is that true?
Yes.
Now, if I'm not living, if I am not practicing that freedom, if I am not living that freedom, and this, we're talking here, we're not talking about absolute freedom, we're not talking about the ontological freedom that the knowing God in itself. We're talking about the psychological freedom. If I don't know what it means to be psychologically free, how can I even approach absolute freedom? How can I do that, Prashant?
Yes.
So this wonderful thing is that this vision of God can be lived. This is a wonderful thing. The living of this vision of God is karma yoga. So that what happens is I conform my actions so that I don't attack people. Dayananda gave 3 principles of Dharma that you conform your life to. Don't harm. Often we're going to feel like harming. Is that true?
It is true.
So we're going to just not harm. That's going to throw me back to myself. If I dramatize, I lose the opportunity to transform the problem. Beneficial contribution, or he talks about doing the needful and doing as non-disturbing as possible. When I commit to that, I will then be thrown back on myself.
BG, question here. How do you distinguish between the first and the third, which is do no harm and not disturbing? So are they not?
Well, what he does, well, first of all, it all comes under non-harmfulness, actually, right? But what happens is, for example, if I'm in India, I don't eat with my left hand, and I'm left-handed, right? Because the thing is that in our Western scriptures, when with the Roman be a Roman, with a Jew be a Jew, I don't cause unnecessarily disturbance.
Right.
So I'm sensitive to my environment, so I don't disturb. It's a very important principle in terms of non-harmfulness because it just keeps things going. So, but when I'm living like this, when I'm living dharmically, there are 2 things. First of all, I'm coming into harmony with the ethical strivings of love and care, aren't I?
Right.
I'm satisfying that my way of being and those core that dharmic striving come together, don't they?
Yes.
See, Swami Dayananda says, if you have a way of being in the world that's in contradiction to that, it causes a rupture in yourself, and it brings you into friction with the environment.
Yes.
So the thing is that what's interesting, though, he says that acceptance is the basis of responsiveness. You cannot, you see, if I'm being accepting, I'm alive to facts, then I can respond to those facts. If I'm reacting or becoming, I'm not alive to facts.
Correct.
I'm just dramatizing.
Yes.
Do you see what I mean? So to sum up, what we're looking at here is that this attitude of being accepting, graceful acceptance, there's no resistance. I'm remaining the same in the face of changing events. That puts me in the world as it is. Living a life of Dharma keeps me in harmony with the world as it is. It's a beautiful thing. It's just because this is how to live a true and real life. So when we're practicing karma yoga, we're not practicing this thing called karma yoga. We are being ourselves while living, which is the whole point of the whole exercise, actually. Do you see what I mean? So it's not an academic thing. And you see, Swami Dayananda said a beautiful thing. What he said was, he says, Vedanta is you.
Right.
So when you are living in the world as it is, you're alive to facts without resistance. Your actions are conforming to love and care. You're being accepting, and you're being, you're caring for yourself, other people, whatever. That way of being that you are being is Vedanta.
Yes.
This is Vedanta. Vedanta is not a theory in a book. Vedanta is a living thing. It is you. This is his magnificent way he put it.
Right.
And so this is the difference. So just the last thing is that it is only in being, which is not, of course it's being responsive, right? But it's only in being that we're lifted out of becoming. And this is what distinguishes Swami Dayananda's psychology from Western psychology, because they don't have any notion of this, actually.
Yes, true. It's wonderful, BG. I really got to learn even more on Pujya Swamiji's perspectives. And just when you think that you know a lot about your teacher, you end up learning some more nuances such as the ones you presented today. So thank you very much. what would be our next topic? What do you have in mind?
I'll contact you about that. We'll work that out. But the main thing here is this. Swami Dayananda's basic, I concentrate on his basics.
Yes.
His basics are magnificent because the more you ponder them, the more you learn how to live them, the more you understand them. And it's just it's a wonderful thing. But this, what establishes ourselves in this graceful acceptance, what establishes ourselves in being rooted in Ishvara is living this vision of God. If we don't live it, it's of no value.
Yeah. True. So thanks once again, Vijay, and looking forward to the next conversation.
Okay.
पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ओम शांति 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 हरि ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओम.